Laurie Dennison.
Dan Sullivan.
Jim Keegan.
Charles Terrio.
Joseph Varga.
Linda Adamo.
We have a public hearing meeting for Justin Hassan.
What it is you want, and,
Sure. So it's a setback variance because the setback requirement follows the structure setback requirement. So we'd be setting it back 20 feet from the side of the property instead of a few feet off. And it varies because there's tree line stuff, so we're kind of jumping. But it's anywhere from 2 to 7 feet off the property.
2 to 7.
Yeah.
And what's the required setback? What is it, 15?
I think I believe it's 20 from side, because it's his side.
In that package, you should have a note from Carl as to why he
Yep.
denied.
So Carl told you you would need a variance,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And what was his reasoning as to why you would need a variance?
His reason is any fence over 42 inches in height is considered a structure, regardless of the fact that it's still a fence. So his statement was that structure has to follow the structural setbacks of the town ordinance, which is 20 feet from the side.
So it's like a 6-foot fence.
And what type of fence is it? Is it like a
Cedar.
stockade type,
Cedar parts.
cemented in, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why can't it just be the 42 inches?
It wouldn't create privacy, monoprivacy.
And then it's, so, because, I've been told, like, the only abutter is the dam, and then you own the other piece of property, is that correct?
So the way that's structured is my property is 2 lots that were merged about 2 years ago through the planning board. And the dam abuts one side, and I'm sorry, I get all the association beaches mixed up. But the one off Nicola Beach one is the direct.
I'm
Thank
familiar
you so much.
with the
Is-
parking, so it's the parking
The
lot,
parking lot,
the dam,
Yeah.
and then the rest would be yours, I'm
Yeah.
assuming.
exactly.
So you're the big brown house.
I know,
Big blue.
yeah,
Big blue house.
Big
I
blue
know,
house.
I know where it is.
Yeah.
I went down and looked at it, actually. So how long of a fence?
I'm just counting the sections.
It looks
in my
black
head, sorry.
from the back.
So it's 8 sections, 8-foot sections, so about 64 feet.
64
long.
Which, yeah, I'm trying to picture it. How close to the water is it?
It's
down?
still at least 30 feet back
30 feet from the water at the
closest
beach?
point.
And, okay.
And then it goes back.
And then, so I'm thinking about it, it goes up, kind of up the hill, and Nicola comes around the corner. There's a guy, has a house right there on the corner. Is it going up past his? It's not.
No.
So, yeah, so he's not gonna look out and look at your
No.
fence. I don't know if he's here or not tonight, I have no idea. Okay, just some stuff I'm trying to get clear in my head here.
Yeah.
So,
Is it-
how tall?
Hopeful if I draw.
6?
6 feet, 7
Okay.
inches.
What,
Is it helpful if I draw the dimensions? I included the septic design, so I can show you where the property is.
Yeah, I'm confused, number one, where you are, because you're giving me a picture of,
Oh, those were references of other properties that are.
okay, because I'm going, so you're the house that's next to the dam,
Yeah.
the new house. It looks black from my house, it doesn't look blue.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
when I
Dark blue
kayak
and
by,
then-
I'll check the color. And where is the fence going?
They
On
have a
what,
copy of the tax map.
part of the property is where is the fence going?
Fence, it's only 65 feet right here.
Oh, it's going to abut 285, that's it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I could sum it up by saying it's mostly to take care of that parking area because people drive up and basically are looking right into your yard. From what I saw, that's, I was making assumptions because I hadn't seen this yet.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm thinking like, yeah, I could see why the guy would want to put a fence there. Okay, thank you.
Do we have any butters here or anybody?
No, he owns the land next door and the other one, a butter, didn't come.
He's not here.
So I was just gonna ask, everybody that's out there, before I even go through and say, you can all stand up and speak, or Chuck's reading over all the
Yeah,
important
just
stuff.
making
I know.
sure we have
But
everything.
is there anybody here right now that is opposed to having this fence up? And if you are, I'd like you to come up and explain your reason is all. Nobody? Okay. That, is there, okay.
I'm not opposed to it, I'm just gonna say I'm probably the only one here that lives in this neighborhood. So it's right next to one of our private beaches.
Yep,
I don't blame you for wanting to fence up.
right.
Honestly, because the parking lot's right there, and the beach is right there, and people drive in and they're looking straight at
Well,
his house.
yeah, and I felt, because like, I'm pretty familiar with it, and I went down and looked. And I mean, I think it would also help anybody that's down there with their kids and stuff, so they're not running over into the guy's yard and stuff, But you know what I mean? People have a way, some people look at things differently, and I was just gonna, my next question was gonna be if anybody's here from the association or anything that have you spoke with any of the other members or whatever? All right, well, but you guys got notified, I'm assuming Jerry, I guess, is the,
I would assume Jerry did, I didn't make it to the last meeting, so.
Yeah, it's on the abutters notice. They got notified.
Yep, okay. So, what do you think?
Right,
You
we
want to
just
go
gotta
over the list of criteria?
Yeah, we just gotta go over the criteria,
Okay,
that's all.
yep.
Start with number one, and he can just explain them. The proposed use would not diminish surrounding property values because, and you have a copy of this?
I have it on my phone, I can pull it up.
Yeah, just to go over it, just so you can explain it to us.
So anyways, it wouldn't diminish the use, it's privacy fence, it would give equal privacy to both sides of the fence, so I actually see it as a joint benefit. So,
All right, then number two, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because, so it wouldn't be, really the public interest is the beach, I guess.
yeah, and it was seen the same way, it's providing an equal level of privacy to both sides of that fence. And it's a new fence, nice fence, it's not something I'm throwing together on the side.
Yep. Are you gonna install it, or you having you're gonna
Yeah,
install it
I'm
yourself?
install-
Yep.
All right, then denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship to you because the zoning restrictions as applied to the property interferes with the reasonable use of the property, considering the unique setting of the property and its environment such that, you said here that placing a fence in the standard setback distance would impact the vegetation and use of the property.
Yeah, and it would also, when you're setting the fence that far back, you're effectively giving away 20 feet of your land for the 65 feet, so it's.
This has come up a few times, and this is one of the things that we wanted to address. Not to go off topic, but this is a topic. We wanted to address it in our zoning regulations, that it calls out anything over a 42-inch high fence needs to be a structure. So
Right.
that's one of the things we were
Yeah,
trying to work on.
we've talked about, trying to talk about that,
Right,
right?
If you talk to the planning board.
Right.
They're gonna look at that.
okay, good.
Right.
So, because we've dealt with this quite a few times.
And maybe, yeah, that's a conversation for later, but
Right.
I got some ideas on it myself, but.
So that's the way we were leaning anyhow, was to make it so that there is a setback, but not 20 feet like a regular structure. Have a setback that's a minimum amount, so everybody can do it.
So let me ask you, Bonnie, the way I kind of envision it is it almost would look better for the beach area closer to the beach. I mean, it's you know, I wish there were other people from the association here, but obviously there aren't, so I guess we'll just,
Is that the association beach or the public? Oh, okay,
yep, over in
They
Nicola.
had noticed she was on the list.
okay. perfect.
Yep.
And I will assume, which I probably shouldn't do, but you will keep that fence in
Yeah, of course.
nice looking order?
Yeah.
Because it is facing the beach, it's facing the water.
Yeah, I'm a bit particular, so yeah. I certainly-
Well,
Well, they do a pretty nice job of keeping the beach side nice, and I've seen his place, he's got a nice place, and I'm sure you're gonna, keep it looking good.
I make a motion then that we,
Well, hold on, I just gotta go through these.
oh, you didn't get the last one? I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's still two more. And then B is that no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general purposes of the zoning ordinance and the specific restrictions on the property because, and he's listed, the zoning ordinance is intended for structures, sheds, home. It's traditional and accepted for fences to abut property boundaries, which is exact, that's true. The town is also allowed in similar properties, and that's absolutely true, many times. I mean, most people put it up without coming to get the variance. We run into that
Yeah, the only thing
most of the
I'd say
time.
to that is, it's like anything else, you know, the zoning and stuff has changed and, you know, but again, I think we always try to do what's reasonable and what's best for everybody involved, so,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And then C, the variance would not injure the public or private rights of others since the fence would be within 1 to 5 feet of the property and go around the major impediments.
Yep.
The trees, I guess,
And it ended up being 2 to 7. I
in
just
other
was-
spots.
Hit a rock, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had to move back instead of, you can't infringe, so.
I think that's all he's got on here. Let's see about that. Looks like that's it. Anybody from the public else want to talk about it before we move on?
I make a motion that we,
Hold on, we'll, anything, you live over there?
Yep, I'm not,
No?
I think it's good.
Joe?
Good for the beach.
Linda?
Well, I make a motion, we go into executive session to make a decision.
So nobody's got any questions, comments?
Yeah.
Executive
a
session.
second.
That's what I already asked. No more discussion? You
No
guys are
more
all
discussion.
set?
Make a motion to vote for it.
You would second that?
Yes, a second.
All in favor?
Of granting?
Aye.
Granted. I mean, we don't need to have other discussions because everybody's.
All in favor of granting?
Granted,
Granted.
granted.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, you're all set.
Thank you all very much.
That was easy.
Appreciate it.
Painless.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Yeah, we've been trying to get that resolved. Our zoning regulations.
So we have to sign this,
Yeah.
all of us?
Well, I think it needs to be like,
All right, you're gonna have to sign it
Approved.
with the,
you know, like, you
How
can,
many?
no set, you know, maybe not above, say, 8 feet. But any,
Robin, that I can sign?
like, anything above 5 feet needs to meet approval from the planning board.
Right.
You know, and then they can look at it.
The official one? Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right, next thing is the public hearing,
we want to
the
do minutes?
continued one.
No, we need to schedule.
No,
a
no,
hearing.
next thing we should do is schedule the public hearing for Paul Gagnon.
For Paul Gagnon?
Yeah.
Okay,
Is Paul here? No?
no.
Because it'd be nice to find out.
So you want a little briefing?
Well, did she talk?
I've
You talked to
I
her?
mean, I haven't talked to him. I've seen it, and I've talked to Carl about it,
Yep.
and a couple of the selectmen about
I
it,
just want
so.
to make sure that Carl, that he was all right, Paul was. Robin, was Paul okay if we schedule him for that time? He said he was okay? Okay.
Okay,
Because we can't talk about it until we have the meeting.
right.
Yeah. So, the,
What is his specific, we should read his application, but maybe not the
No.
criteria
Yeah,
thing,
no.
but what it, you know, so, you know, everybody knows what he wants and, whatever.
Trying to find where
He
it
just
is.
wants a
Okay.
setback, right?
Yeah, this is the setback variance for,
It doesn't say on this one. You have it?
I just remember reading it.
Yeah.
Here it is. This is all backwards. So here it is, it's on that side. So it's not.
Yeah, it don't matter. All right, so this,
So July
16th?
16th, is it 16th, Robin?
I think it's the 16th and 17th.
is
Yeah,
that- is
16th is
that
Tuesday.
the Tuesday?
16.
Is everybody-
6:30 p.m.?
Do we have enough for, will you be here?
Yep.
Okay, I'll be here.
You, Laurie, you're available?
Okay, so we should have
Dan,
enough for a quorum?
you're not going on a walkabout across the country somewhere or something then?
Not yet.
Okay.
I make a motion that we schedule the public hearing for Paul Gagnon on July 16th.
I'll second it.
6:30.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Good, so we're done with that. Now, next thing is the continuance of the public hearing for Middleton Workforce Housing.
Okay, we're gonna, so you're gonna step away.
So
right?
we can do, yes, but we can do, before we do that, we'll do our minutes, we can approve the minutes.
Correct.
All right,
Did you look at the minutes? You're gonna go to the bathroom?
no, I'm good,
Oh,
but we're gonna take a break here.
yeah, we'll just do the minutes, then we can
Alright.
take a little break. Everybody look at the minutes from, no, we had,
Yeah, we had plenty of
Yeah.
sets. We tried to follow
Should be
them.
two sets of minutes, should be the meeting and the
Sidewalk.
From
site.
last month, yes.
you gotta do that.
What's that?
And
Get the
thank you
minutes
for
approved.
submitting everything.
For,
I make a
yeah,
motion,
last month.
we accept
Okay,
the minutes.
you're out, get out of here, go.
What?
Yeah, I gotta do that because
Yeah.
he's out,
Because I'm the applicant.
because that's from his,
The only part of the meeting was the site walk and the thing, it wasn't anything that
Right.
I did.
right.
Okay. Well, this was a meeting from May 21st.
The updated ZBA application and construction, did we talk about that?
The what?
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that you did on that, Robin. I think it was
That's real
great.
quick, all right, that's real quick. You guys have the stuff, take it, look at it,
Yeah.
next meeting, come back.
Yeah, that's a
That was
good,
great. We need to change things, and I
Run
think
it
that
by
was good.
Laura after that.
And this was from Laura?
You guys approve it.
Was this from you, Laura, these?
No,
Okay.
state, but I'm here right now.
Oh, awesome, okay.
Yeah, no, it's very good. Very thorough, too. Great for the applicant.
So we'll review this at our next meeting, because that should be a fairly quick public hearing. And then we can get it to Laura if we have any changes and make sure it's good after that. Right now I'm done.
Okay,
Okay, but why can't he take care of these?
I don't know what these are.
That's the meetings from the 21st.
I'd like to make a motion that
What
we
was that a
accept the
public hearing?
minutes of the May 21st meeting.
I'll second. Those are just the minutes of the meeting.
I definitely second it and third
Well, I
it.
guess I was.
Yeah, no, it's a, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so you do that.
Right. Okay. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes?
Yeah.
Yes.
And, nobody noticed anything, no changes needed or, okay. I'll make a motion,
Already done.
Seconded.
oh, okay.
Just need to vote.
So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nope.
You still have to do the sidewalk.
I make a motion, we accept the minutes for the site walk.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 I abstain.
What else we got, anything?
Nope.
Okay.
We're gonna take a break until 6:30.
Yeah, so, yeah, we're just gonna take like a quick 5-minute break. We had another meeting before this, I apologize, but we'll start the meeting right around 6:30.
Well, that's when the hearing is scheduled. Hearing is scheduled for 6:30.
Member right now. Good, right now. Right, but you can't make any motion. This meeting, or you made a motion and then go from there. I was just like I said, I just wanted to bring that up to you. Oh, you're right.
how about you?
Go to the left next, because I want to before the meeting. No problem.
Yeah, but do we have? Now, here? Here?
Right here.
Okay.
This is kind of a separate one. So
Laurie Gunnison?
Dan Zalaga.
Jim Keegan,
Joe Varga.
Tim Brown. All right. I'm going to make a motion that we put Joe on as a voting member in the absence of Chuck. Somebody want to second that?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nobody's
We're doing it
opposed.
again.
Okay. This is the continuance. Oh, where, I didn't even know she was gone.
I said it like 3 times.
Oh, hey, you look. See that?
What do we wait for?
You can probably
Linda.
explain the process we're going to go through. Linda knows what that is.
Was that your son, Bob, on the motorcycle with you there at the, it was?
My third son.
Nice kid.
Thank you.
Hopefully, he's careful on that motorcycle. He sure did seem excited to take a ride up there. That's good. I can remember when I was younger, I used to be that excited to ride them myself. Good, good. Glad you guys.
T-shirts.
Yeah, yeah. That was the first time he's ever been up?
He went last year on Thursday with somebody, a friend of his, so
Oh.
not me, that's my first time.
Yeah.
Oh, is it your first
Oh,
time?
no kidding. Well, congratulations.
weather.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a beautiful day. Thank you for saying so.
Okay, so we'll get it started, I guess. You ready, Linda? I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were missing. We took
I know,
roll
I'm so
call,
hard
but
to miss. I'm so-
you're here now, so I think, do you want to start it off with
Well,
the,
I think
or Bob's
Well,
wants to?
what we had talked about was you've submitted some additional information, and so I think the board is ready to have some additional public input based on the additional information you've submitted, and then I think the board's ready to deliberate tonight, assuming that you're done with what you want to present and the public's done with what it wants to present, and we're done with that at a time that allows us to deliberate. So do you want to go over the additional materials you've submitted?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Bob Best, an attorney at Soloway and Hollis, and representing Middleton Workforce Housing, the applicant for the variances today. Thank you for the chance to be here again. And also, thank you for attending the site visit for those that were able to do that a week ago Saturday. We had a good chance to kind of walk along the Kings Highway to see the corners of the property and then to know where the corners of the building were and to be able to kind of sight in to the property, how far in the building would be, and get a little bit of reference for some of those pieces. We also had a different site plan for everybody to take a look at as they were there, which we included in the letter that we sent last Friday. And so the site visit and that site plan were some of the things that the board wanted us to provide between the meetings. In addition to that, you asked and we agreed to provide the affordable housing data, which is the list of all the projects that we were citing from and quoting from. That list comes from United States Housing and Urban Development's resource website, and some of that information came from New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority. We had expected that New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority would have a little bit more data, a little bit more comprehensive data about the dates that some of the buildings were built. And it turns out that data wasn't available from them. So we provided you everything that we had with respect to the dates of some of those buildings and when they were created in those different projects. I also have a list of all of the Housing Finance Authority projects that they've done with their financing for about the last 10 years. And I can provide that for the board today. It's a little bit of a confusing list because they don't have addresses for these things. They'll just say Woodland Village, and up to you to figure out what town that's in, or Heater Landing, Woodland Village, Braunstein, Apple Ridge. And so without knowing more about these projects, I can't tell what town they're in or make that comparison that the board was interested in. If I was able to do that, I would have given you that whole list as well. But it does provide some of the information about the projects they developed over the last 10 years. So we did provide you with the letter, the things that we had about that, and that was some of the information that you wanted. We did provide a little bit of information about school enrollment. You had asked, the board had asked whether the applied economic research study that is from, I believe, 2012 had been updated over the years, and we found out that it hadn't been, that New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority did put out an RFP to get somebody to update that data. But what we did provide for you is everything that we could gather from every other source available, which was generally national data, but a little bit of commentary both from HEFA and from our own information about how that national data and that 2012 data relates to sort of the current state of things. And generally speaking, all of the users of that data from HEFA, from the state, from regional planning commissions, still regard that 2012 data as being valid and accurate, and if anything, overstating the number of children because of the changes that have occurred with school enrollment over the years. So we provided that to you, a little bit of explanation in the letter, and then you asked us information about development cost. We were representing to you at the board that providing workforce housing in smaller buildings would cost more, and so you asked us for proof, for some evidence of that. So what we did is reach out to Gary Thomas, who's the owner of North Point Construction. North Point Construction has been in the industry in New Hampshire for probably 25 or 30 years, and they do about $65 million a year in projects. They're not all housing projects, some of them are, but they're all kinds of projects, but they're a big contractor. And so Gary was able to provide us a letter affirming that, in his view, doing separate buildings would cost between 20 and 30% more. He explains the reasons in his letter for why it would cost more to do it in separate buildings. It largely relates to the added infrastructure that comes from having separate connections, separate driveways, separate concrete and foundations, separate roofs, all of those kinds of things, which are outlined in his letter. And he also converted that percentage estimate to a dollar estimate, and it concluded it could easily add another $2.5 to $3 million to the project to do the same project that we're proposing in 5 buildings, as opposed to doing it in 1 building. We asked him about 5 buildings because under your ordinance, you permit 8 as a matter of right, and you have a bonus density if you do certain things where you might get a 9th in 1 unit, and so 5 was the closest thing to getting 38 in a group of 8 or 9, and it ends up with the last building being smaller or some smaller segment of that, but it takes at least 5 buildings to get that number of units. So that's why we had him quote that. So that provided all of the additional information that the board was looking for after the last meeting. You should have that in front of you because we sent it ahead of time. We also included the budgets that had been provided earlier so you could compare what we had said to what Gary had said about the budgets. I don't have a whole lot else to add about the additional information. The only thing that I would say is at some point, perhaps when the other public input is completed, it probably makes sense to summarize the 5 criteria for the variance that we talked about, because it's been since April that we presented what those information and argument was about. I wouldn't want to go over it all again because we spent probably 2 hours going over it the first time. So just, in 5 minutes, I just want to remind everybody what those arguments were about, because it's been a couple of months and it's easy to kind of let those things not be front of mind as you sit down and vote. So I don't know when you would like us to do that, either now or after the public testimony, but I just wanted to make sure we had 5 minutes to be able to do that.
When? Yeah, all right. We'll
That's what
do
I
the
think makes the most sense, too.
public input first, and then,
Excellent. So that's all I have for additional information. Do you have any questions about the additional information that
No, and
you
I
wanted?
appreciate us getting it well in advance. So it was nice that we could go through it and see it all, so thank you.
Thank you. I actually wanted to get it even further in advance, but
No,
some of the
okay.
information was a little challenging to get a hold of right away. So thank you for that, and thank you for noticing.
thanks, Bob. Okay, we're going to open it up to a public question, comment. Again, I just say that we feel like we're we're ready to, to vote tonight on this. We've had a chance to review all the information that's been provided. I think we got a pretty good grasp on it. Just bear in mind that it's going to take some time because you actually have to read through, a bunch of stuff and go over every criteria for every variance that he's requested. So with that said, if anybody has anything they'd like to say, please step up to the microphone, state your name and whether you're an abutter or not, and have at it. Anything?
Oh, we have a young lady first.
I can come up here and repeat all these good things. I just hope, Paul Crew, we can repeat the same things. I just hope as a board that we all elected, that you all know what we want as a community and as a town. That's all I got to say.
Joe Bailey, I'm not an abutter. So everything that was said here by the attorney happened the first meeting. What we neglected to talk about was the last meeting, in which Middleton was referred to with New Durham as not doing our fair share. Okay? We're a small town. We can't afford a fair share. But beyond that, I think everybody in this room who are taxpayers in this town have been paying our fair share for a long time with very little federal input to this town or state input to this town for anything that we need. Okay? I've worked hard all my life. I've always paid my taxes. My tax bill is current up until this one we just got last couple of weeks. All right? I pay my fair share. People who don't pay their fair share, I still have to step up and pay more because they don't. Okay? So don't tell me I don't pay my fair share, sir. I pay more than I think I need to. I think anybody in this room will probably agree with that same thing, that they pay more than they should be. All right?
Yep.
So I take a very big offense to that.
Thanks, Joe. I'll speak to it a little bit. To my recollection, Joe, I believe what Mr. Best was talking about was the number of workforce housing, in that spectrum of cost per rent. With that said, we had the board, we've discussed that, we've whether we agree with it or not, it's been taken into consideration. But I don't think that he was saying in any way that people aren't paying their fair share or doing enough for their community. But that's just my take on it from what I had heard. It was mostly about the number of workforce housing priced, rentals available, if you will. If you would like to address that, Bob.
Why doesn't he just address all of the
Okay, yeah. Hold it, yep, Kate?
Kate Bizard. I'm not an abutter, but I had a question. Has there been any evidence as to what it does to the property values of the abutting properties?
Yes, that's part of the criteria that we're going to go over, and we'll talk about that as we get. Yeah, we're going to do it.
There was a
Right.
letter submitted by the applicant saying that it would not impact negatively surrounding property values. Yes. You asked if there was any evidence submitted, and I'm telling you what evidence was submitted.
We'll address that.
You're going to hear some more about it. Hi.
I'm Sue Dooley, and I'm pretty close to being a butter. I'm just down the road from a couple of property owners. My concern is, we've had water issues all the time there on the property on 153. But my concern is the well that they're talking about. poop rolls downhill, and we're the lowest level. And I'm concerned of the building and how it's going to affect our houses. And we had no reassurance, so if something happens, are you going to guarantee my house is going to be sold? If I can't live here anymore, are you guys going to decide what happens to my family? Are you going to help us out, Chuck, at all on that? I really would like to know that. Because I'm not against workforce housing at all. I mean, I understand what the purpose is. What happens afterwards when those houses can't be used for workforce housing? How is it going to impact our schools? We haven't really heard a lot of that information. Thank you.
The only thing I could say to that is that's not what the zoning board does. They request land variances. We rule according to the to the law and what our best perception of it is. Hold on. But the planning board is where all of those concerns, with the wells and all of that stuff is their per diem, not ours.
Jimmy, and just so you know, that when we purchased our house 37 years ago, the planning board was all about getting money in their pockets. And I know you guys aren't that planning board, but they let a lot of things slide to the point where that house, we found out after the house, and we got the thing to live there, says that we weren't in a flood zone. And a month after we moved in, we were in zone A, not zone B or C. It was the worst flood zone you could put a house into. So over the years, we've made an agreement, kind of a gentleman's agreement, that we would do what we had to do. But now we're too old to keep doing that. And we're too old to keep fixing what the town messed up on. And that's what I'm afraid of here. This town has let a lot of stuff go before this planning board. Not you guys, but the ones before you, the good old boys. And it can't work that way anymore because it affects all of us. Thank you.
So the only thing I'll say to that is I've lived in this town a long, long time. And, I don't know of anybody lining their pockets with anything, all right? But I can assure you that I am a man of integrity. I do not care what, anybody has to say, what anybody thinks. I'm going to do every single time what I feel is best for this town within the law. And obviously, we're paying an attorney to sit here and advise us through this whole process. So, again, I would reiterate that the planning board is where you go to address issues that that had to do with all of that other stuff. And Mr. Mullen, who's now the chair of the planning board, in my opinion, is a good man and will run that board the way it should be run, in my opinion. That's about all I can say about that. Anybody else? Hi, Dave. Haven't seen you in a while.
Been working.
How's the dog?
Doing good.
Good.
Dave Mayer, I believe I am in a butter. I noticed there's a couple of variances of multi-family housing to allow workforce housing and Section 8 housing. Is there a Section 8 apartment or apartments in this building?
I believe the answer last time was yes, it's possible. There may be some.
Is it possible or yes or no?
The answer was that they cannot prohibit people who are the recipients of Section 8 vouchers from being in this property.
Okay. Have you ever lived near Section 8 housing?
I am neither the applicant nor a board member. I'm not here to answer.
Okay, I have. As a junior brand new hire with airline, next door to me, down in Baltimore, Section 8 housing. We were never told that that was there within apartments. 24/7 techno music, people banging on doors looking for drugs. It is a different environment than what we have here in Middleton. We did not have police, we did not have fire. Your variances for 38 buildings, rooms together sets up failure for this town in the biggest way possible. I see pictures here. I see this building. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent in this building to keep Middleton, Middleton. Don't ruin it. This is not what this town's about. And your variances of hardship, and we're not doing our fair share, and I picked up on the same thing he said. My tax bill, unreal. And I'm doing my fair share, and it's like, the problem is the workforce housing, the numbers, it's just a factor of, there's affordable housing in this town. It's just not check marking a certain box determined by some piece of paper. We don't need this situation in this town. And while I appreciate Chuck's tenaciousness for his project and his golf course might fit in this town, but having that kind of environment, we're setting ourselves up for failure. We're setting ourselves for higher taxes. And I know my tax bills is. So, I know you guys make a big decision tonight, but you're pretty much, the fate of Middleton's future is in your hands.
Thanks, Dave. Joanne?
Joanne Koski. I wasn't planning to speak, but since the subject of Section 8 has come up, a question for the developer. Because I'm quite familiar with Section 8. I managed rental units up to about 100 units at one time. And for a person to qualify for Section 8 housing, they apply, and the housing has to pass a certain inspection. I'm assuming then that the housing that is proposed will meet the Section 8 standards, which is really the only criteria for denying Section 8 housing.
The representation was that there were certain HUD and state standards that would need to be met in order to get their financing that they intend to get, yes.
Once again, my experience with Section 8 housing is a mixed bag. These are people who need extra assistance to get a leg up on survival and improving their lives. Some of them take advantage of the opportunity, and some of them just take advantage.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Tom Dooley. I'm not in a butter. I'm just wondering, who is going to be responsible for the management of all these 38 units? Is it going to be Chuck? Or whom? If you should put that in there, you got all these people, somebody has to be responsible for things that are going wrong. And also, for how long? Say, whomever has the opportunity to sell everything a year down the road, 2 years down the road. And who knows who is going to come in and overtake it. Now, like you had said previously, there was a lot of covenants in place to cover things. But I can't see a new owner coming in afterwards and sticking to those covenants. It may take years of lawsuit and legal actions to get things corrected. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
It was presented to us that the covenants in the deed would be over 30 years. So.
I believe the covenants are dictated more by the financing and how it's financed and along those lines. There's
actually two sets of covenants. One is dictated by the financing, which comes from both federal and state government, and whoever is responsible for the financing will be responsible for complying with those covenants. But your zoning ordinance also has a requirement for covenants. Those covenants are required for 30 years, renewable every time there's a new renter. So unless you got a renter who lives there for 30 years, every time there's a new renter, that 30-year period renews. So potentially, those covenants last forever. And the town is responsible for making sure that they're followed.
And as far as the management of the property and the buildings and like that, at least to my knowledge right now, it would be Middleton Workforce Housing, which is the ones requesting this variance, and I don't know if you'd call them the owners, but they're the driving force behind this, and they're the management company, if you will. So it would fall on them.
That's what I'm getting at, the management
Yeah.
company. If there's a problem, who are we going to go to? Who is the management company? Who is going to be directly responsible to answer any questions with problems to be addressed? And I don't know what may or may not happen if this thing should go through. I want the residents of this town to have some recourse. And also, have they addressed an impact study on the traffic? You know what it's like?
Planning board thing.
The planning board also? Okay, and you guys coordinate with the planning board at all on this? Or does the planning board have to, agree on this also?
Right, so the zoning board has a lot of impact, with the planning board as far as writing ordinances and things like that, because the zoning board is the one that, basically either enforces it or it gives you a variance, but the planning board has much more authority and a broader scope to address a lot of the issues that you guys are talking about. I mean, we give you the opportunity to stand up here and voice your opinion, so you know that we're hearing everything that you say, but at the end of the day, we only deal with land issues, a variance request. We have no authority to tell him what he has to do for a well or a septic or anything like that. That's all the planning board.
And if this is approved, it has to go to the planning board for site plan approval. There's an entirely separate process over at the planning board that also needs to happen.
Okay, so the planning board has to also go through the hearing stage and go through questions?
Yes.
It would be an arduous process, I'm sure. Yes.
Okay,
All
thank you.
right. Oh, you ain't gonna beat me up, are you?
I'll be nice. Vicky Croto. I'm just really concerned of what the costs for the town are going to be. Will we have to hire a fire department? Where now we have volunteers. Are we going to have to add more police to the police department? How about our school? I know last time he said three kids for a 38-unit building. I hate to say it, but I can't believe that. I mean, you did say the data was not updated. I just can't believe that. So what is our expense going to be? That really makes me nervous. I can't support this because I just think it's going to cost the town of Middleton way more money than we all want to pay for.
Thanks, Vicky. So, if I answered your question, it would just be with my opinion as a taxpayer. And if you guys want to come over and drink beer Sunday, I'd be glad to do that. But right now, again, I'd have to say, that's the planning board that's going to look into all that stuff. I mean, this isn't a cop-out, It's just a process, and this is not always the first step in the process, but this time it is. And, if it's approved, then it will go on, and, that's the best I can do. I hear you. All right. Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
Roxanne Tufts Keegan, I am in a butter. I guess my only point would be is that the town, ordinances come before the town and they go before the voters, and you vote at those at the ballot, and you vote whether you want something to go into effect or not. So we have these ordinances that need to be followed, but then they have to come to you to get the variance. But I would say, look at what the intent was, what the voters said, this is what we want in our town for criteria, and, to just go forward and think about that versus to give the variance. And I get a variance for certain things is easier than a variance, but this is a huge ask of the town to grant this variance.
I'm not going to try to answer that because I'd like to have some supper when I get home, so.
Joanne Koski. Again, I didn't I hope I didn't make it sound like I'm anything more than neutral on this issue. People who need this kind of housing we know what the real estate market is like. People need housing, and there's just not enough of it to go around. And I realize too that, and I'm hoping the other people in this meeting understand, that the zoning board is kind of bound by what the regulations are. Without a legal reason to deny the variances, then they're kind of in a spot where they have to make the decision according to the law. I do have a question though for Chuck. And actually, this isn't a question you can probably answer right away, but if there is a resident manager occupying one of the units, that would be a situation where the other residents in town would have someone to go to for recourse to get, find out what was going on with the issues. So once again, I'm not for this, nor am I against it, and my my heartfelt feelings are with the zoning board because this is a difficult decision to make, and I hope you make the right one for yourselves, for the town, and for the law.
Thanks, Joanne. Anybody else? Okay. What's that? Yep, you want to? Oh. Go ahead, Dave.
I just noticed EMS rolled by. So here's a quick question. You're talking about a resident manager. Are they going to have any sort of specialty training, special de-escalation training, any law enforcement training, any EMS training? Because having lived there, I lived in New Hampshire and Maine prior to that, and Jackie and I were like, what is wrong with this place? EMS rolled all the time. Law enforcement was there all the time. It is a different environment. It is what it is. I don't want to use the term rats in a cage theory, but in this environment, it is going to have. And has anybody from the EMS addressed their extra responsibility to, what is it, about 120 some people? It's like, what is that, like 5% of the town? More? I mean, your variances, it's the spirit of the rules, and I get. But once again, you got to do what's right for Middleton.
Thanks, Dave. Again, those are, as far as a resident manager, I don't even know if that's something the planning board could, we've never dealt with something like this, so I don't know, but certainly nothing the zoning board does.
Based on the RSA, if it ever did come down, based on the covenants, the town, the zoning has, they could have that in the criteria in the deed, but based on the stuff that I read about. I mean, that's something down the, it is.
Okay, anybody else, comments, questions? Because we're gonna let Bob have his say. No? Going once, going twice, gone. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Again, Bob Best from Soloway and Hollis, speaking for the applicant Middleton Workforce Housing. I want to begin, I left a couple of people here with the impression last time when I talked about fair share that I meant fair share of taxes or fair share of contributions or payments. And I must have done a terrible job of explaining what I was on about at the time, because that's never been a subject or a topic that I would give voice to. I would never critique what someone else is paying for their taxes or suggest that they ought to pay more or that kind of thing, especially not before a zoning board. What we were talking about was exactly what you explained, that there's a requirement in the statute for every municipality to provide their fair share of workforce housing or opportunities to develop workforce housing, and that's the fair share that we were talking about here. With respect to taxes, and This kind of relates to some of the other comments. This project will have zero tax breaks from Middleton. It will pay full freight taxes on its property on what will probably be a $10 million property. And so whatever those tax rates are, that's what they pay. And I know it's planning board review. I don't want to dive into planning board review, but planning boards do often take a look at what's the net impact of a development and do they pay more than they cost based on projected school enrollment, police use, EMS use, all of those kinds of things. And that's a planning board criteria. It's one of the things that they can take a look at. Typically in a project like this, it pays far, far more in taxes than the utilization is. But I don't want to dive deeper into that because I know that that's not your issue for that. There was a question about any evidence of property values to abutting parcels. Thank you for offering the reminder of the letter that we submitted from the realtor who has seen developments all over the state and opined that it would not have a negative impact on the abutting property values. We also provided evidence where we took a look at buildings that are architecturally the same as these, that are used for workforce housing in other municipalities in New Hampshire, and what did the property values of the surrounding homes look like before and after. And there was a continual upward trend in the property values and the tax assessments for the properties that surrounded the buildings that are architecturally identical to these and used for workforce housing. And so we had that in evidence as well. There was a discussion, concern about water issues in well and septic, and I think you pointed out correctly that that's the planning board's expertise. And it's not just a discussion that they have, we have engineers, they have engineers that test our data and review it and make sure that it works. Also, wells and septic systems are approved by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, who apply the science to understand what's going on with that. And the science for those things is pretty well known, and there are lots of things that can be done to make sure it doesn't have an adverse impact. But I know that that is a planning board issue, and I don't want to dive any deeper into that. There was a fair bit of discussion about Section 8 housing, and I think the initial answer that the board was able to reply based on the information we provided is accurate and correct, and that is the definition of workforce housing includes people of a variety of incomes. We didn't define workforce housing. The federal government did initially, and then the state echoed it, and then Middleton echoed it again in your local ordinance. But the definition is what it is. We are providing workforce housing because that's what the statute says is needed in the state at the highest priority. And we don't get to pick and choose what part of workforce housing we make available to that. We're complying with all of the state, local, and national federal laws regarding that. Yes, it does have the possibility that people with subsidies for the housing will live in it. Section 8 is one kind of a subsidy. There are others as well. I don't know if I necessarily agree with some of the characterizations of what modern Section 8 housing looks like. One of the things that is important to know about this is these covenants that we've talked about so much. They're not just things that sort of sit out there, and if someone has a problem, they can look at a covenant, and maybe if they find it, they can go complain about it. These are audited and surveyed and inspected by the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, and they're acting on behalf of HUD for these, where they come every year and inspect what you have going on in your place, and is it clean and wholesome, and are the residents meet the right criteria, and are you managing it correctly, and is it safe, and are there any criminal element around, and all of those kinds of things. And these are actively pursued and monitored throughout the entire time that the financing exists, which is at least 30 years. And beyond 30 years, we've met everybody's definition. Again, that's not a definition or a timeline that we created. We're complying with the ones that are first embedded in your ordinances and on up through the legal structure. And so making sure all of those covenants are honored and continued and followed is not just sort of a passive safeguard that people can rely on. It's active. There's actual annual reviews and audits of all of those kinds of things. I think there was questions about responsibility for things that go wrong, or some discussion about what if the properties are sold. The covenants, first of all, the ones from the town are recorded at the Registry of Deeds. They're on record for the world. And they're also, they apply to every owner in perpetuity if the thing is ever sold. It doesn't have to be sold. One owner can keep it for the whole time if they want to. But whatever it is, those covenants don't go away. Those audits don't go away. HUD doesn't stop coming around and doing their inspections and all of those kinds of things. Those things continue no matter what happens with ownership. Let's see, that was about the cost to the town. A lot of talk about whether the manager of the property will be a resident in one of the apartments. I don't know if we would even know that to be the case this far in advance where you haven't even put a shovel in the ground. It certainly could happen, but regardless of whether it's somebody who physically lives there or not, their identity is well known and published, and the town offices will have no lack of understanding of who they are or who to call about anything that goes on in those buildings because, again, the audit process that HUD is looking for follows up on all of those things to make sure that there's availability and a contact person and somebody to check on all of those kinds of things. A little bit about special training for police and EMS and that sort of thing. I suspect that that's probably not the case that a manager is trained in those things, but those kinds of solutions are available, obviously through the public agencies that provide those services with the tax money that the development pays. I believe that responded to all of today's questions, and I just would now offer a summary of the variance criteria and then be done. If you're ready with that, if you have any questions about today's questions.
I just have one question. I believe the gentleman's question to me was who will manage that property? And my response was I thought that it would be Middleton Workforce Housing. Well, so if that's the case, then who is Middleton Workforce Housing? Who's the guy that you call if you want an answer to something?
Sure. We're talking right now, Middleton Workforce Housing is a newly formed entity created to advance this project. Who it will become and who its managers will be and all of those details as things roll forward. We're so far in advance of that. Timeline, if you guys voted yes tonight, we would then pursue planning board review. It would easily take 3 or 4 meetings of the planning board, maybe longer with some engineering review. And if that all went as well as it possibly could, the best case would be that you'd start construction sometime in the beginning of 2025. You'd probably build it for a year and a half, 26, 27, and now you're starting to rent the things in 27, 28, and that's when you're hiring managers and you could put a name to that person. Will it be Bob Best? Will it be Patrick Green? No, it won't be us, but it'll be somebody that's well-known, identified, known throughout the process, but it's just too early in the process to have any specific names on those people that might be the face and the active voice to answer a call or take a complaint about a thing. But there will absolutely be people
Okay,
to do that.
I just didn't want them to think that I was the guy not wanting to answer their question, that's all.
Fair.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about today's feedback? Okay, so let's just quickly go through the variance criteria. We went over these in April at great length, and I don't want to belabor it, and I think we just read the whole thing in April, and that was too long and too much to do.
I think we're about to read it all again, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm not. I won't, I promise.
No, I think we are.
Oh, you are? Okay, then I'll certainly be even more brief if you're going to kind of go through that. You've got your 5 variance criteria, and they all build around concepts like the spirit and intent of the regulation, what is denial would be an unnecessary hardship, what are the public rights that are at play here, the purpose of the regulation, and contrary to the public interest, affecting property values. And so some of that stuff we provided specific evidence about things like property values. We provided some specific evidence about the idea of a hardship. If you're not able to build the project, you're not able to have workforce housing in Middleton. You can't advance a workforce housing project in compliance with your ordinance. And we've kind of explained that with the budget and with the letter from Gary, as well as other information that we've talked about kind of a lot through all of the meetings about the cost of doing this. I think probably the most important part of this to kind of capture and to understand is this idea of what's the spirit and intent of the regulation and what's in the public's interest. And the legislature has provided a real clear statement of the public interest as it relates to workforce housing. It's in statute. We provided it in the letter that we sent in May 15th. And I just want to read that little section of the statute, because I think it is vitally important to understand what the statute requires of the towns. All citizens of the state benefit from a balanced supply of housing which is affordable to persons and families of low and moderate income. Establishment of housing which is decent, safe, sanitary, and affordable to low and moderate income persons and families is in the best interest of each community and the state of New Hampshire and serves a vital public need. Now, as you've gone and developed your zoning ordinances, all of those are developed under the authority that the state gives you. It says, here's your town, here's your authority to develop your ordinances. When the state comes and says, here's what the public's interest is, here's what the vital state need is, by virtue of the state doing that, they guide your hand with the ordinances that you create and sort of establish what are you accomplishing with the ordinance that you're creating. And it is important to have zoning ordinances that talk about setbacks and what belongs in what zone, but it's really hard to override or surpass something that comes in that clear language from the state where they say it's in the vital state interest of not just the state, but each community.
And I believe our town is in compliance with that. That's been my issue all along. Let him talk. Okay. Sorry.
We've talked about that quite a bit, and I know that there's been a lot of public opinion, and you've shared your opinion about the town's compliance with that. And I've got to leave it to you to vote what you believe and vote your conscience and take the guidance that you can from your legal counsel. I think that the evidence about workforce housing in Middleton is pretty clear. You've got developments from your own regional planning commission that have identified whether there's housing opportunities in Middleton and where you rank within your town. We know that there aren't any multifamily housing anywhere in Middleton. We know that there hasn't been a workforce housing proposal ever in Middleton. We know that the ordinance that you require doesn't permit it to be developed at the cost that's possible with an 8-unit apartment. We know that there aren't any workforce housing units in Middleton that are subject to any kind of covenants that restrict the rent or limit them. We know that there aren't any workforce housing apartments in Middleton that are subject to the kinds of inspections to make sure that they're safe and clean and wholesome and properly built and they don't have lead or CFCs or solar or any of those kinds of things. And so I think that in our view, there's really strong evidence that says there's more that can be done in Middleton for workforce housing, and this project is a step in the right direction. With that in mind, if I said any more, I would just be repeating myself. So enough with that. Enough on that point. I think that certainly relying on the written materials we submitted, both in our application and the subsequent materials, I think 3 different follow-up correspondences that we've provided with additional information to suit the board, to answer all the questions that you may have had about everything from schools to housing. But the people that you want to have in your community, we talked about that at the first meeting, people that make $75,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year. In order for them to be able to afford housing, it's got to be below that magic number of $1,843 or 18 something per month. And in order to do that, you've got to be able to build and deliver housing with every efficiency possible. And that's why these variances are so needed. Because without every single efficiency, which the statute lays out and says reasonable opportunities to develop workforce housing need to be available in every town. Without all those efficiencies, you can't build workforce housing, and if you can't build workforce housing, then you're not having a healthy community. Set aside the state's statute and what it requires for workforce housing. If you want to have a vibrant community with middle-income families, young people that don't move away because there's no opportunity here or they can't afford to live here, then you need to have a diverse housing stock. And this is a part of that mosaic for that diverse housing stock. It's an important piece. And it helps whenever you provide workforce housing or senior housing, it takes relief off of other housing stock and makes other housing stock more available to others that have either larger families or something else going on that makes sense when you have people that are favoring, smaller one-bedroom apartments or two-bedroom apartments. Okay. I think I would just be repeating myself if I went on any further. Certainly rely on our written materials. Thank you for the chance to be here. I hope you do vote favorably to this project. I think it's important for Middleton to be able to do so. And I hope that we've achieved and met all of the variance criteria for you. If you have any questions, glad to answer them. If not, I will sit down and you won't hear from me again today.
Questions? No? Joe? Linda? No.
All right, I will exit.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, quick. Take a quick 5-minute break, just, what's that? What's that?
Do you want to close the public hearing before we do that?
So I'm gonna close the hearing for 5 minutes.
No, you're gonna close the
Or
public
close the hearing and come back and we'll go to the next step in the process. All right.
So
5
need a
minutes.
motion to do that?
Motion to.
No, you don't need a motion.
Okay, all right. Oh, good, my God. Stretch. Bang the gavel.
Yeah, we need to get to it, yeah.
Okay, we're going to get started again.
Louder.
Joe Varga got a phone call from his wife. She needed him home immediately, so, but we still have enough members to continue
Are you
on.
okay with a board of 4, or do you want to wait until you can have a board of 5? Go? Okay. So at this point, I'm going to sort of take over running the meeting, fully understanding, the board understands it, you understand it, but I want the public to understand it. I have no vote here. I have not influenced this decision. This is not my decision. I'm just helping coordinate everything because it's sort of an unwieldy process, okay? So there are 3 variances that have been requested here. They've been applied for, sort of all smushed together. They've been discussed, sort of all smushed together. But we're going to talk about them separately, and the board is going to vote on them separately. So that's going to be the process. We're going to talk about all 3. We're going to vote on all 3. And so we're going to start with the variance from Article 5D1, which is a request to allow multifamily housing in the Middleton Four Corners District where it's not otherwise allowed. So in the Middleton Four Corners District, the uses that are allowed are single-family dwellings, 2-family dwellings, and mixed uses with up to 2 dwellings per lot. And what I'm going to do is just sort of summarize the arguments the applicant has made, and then the board's going to discuss the criteria as we go through it. So the applicant has not really specifically addressed this particular variance. We've heard a lot about why workforce housing is important and why it should be allowed, why having it all in one building makes it financially feasible, but we haven't specifically heard a lot about the multifamily aspect of it, though it goes hand in hand with the workforce housing aspect of it. So what the New Hampshire Supreme Court has held is with regard to the public interest and the spirit of the ordinance, it's held that they're related, but not identical. And there's basically 2 tests. One is, will it threaten the public health, safety, and welfare? Or will it alter the essential character of the neighborhood? And we've also heard a lot about what the public interest is in workforce housing. So what I'd like the board to start doing is, let's start with the public interest criteria and whether or not you think that allowing multifamily housing in the Middleton workforce, in the Middleton Four Corners District, would either threaten the public health, safety, or welfare, or alter the essential character of the neighborhood.
Well, I appreciate, we went out there to look at that property last week, and I was so grateful that we were able to go see exactly where it was, where the Middleton Four Corners, and assuming it's in that exact spot where we went, of course. And I was able to see the single-level elementary school right there at the parking lot, the alpaca farm, the home right next door to the property, and it had a long frontage there, but that was a single-family home. Across the street, mobile homes. And I do know that the master plan does, I mean, we don't even have any, as you said earlier, we have no multifamily developments in our town. So I do understand that. However, I feel that in that location, and I also do feel that workforce housing is important, but maybe not in that specific spot on that lot, you know, map 17, lot 23. As I looked, I thought it would definitely alter the spirit, you know, what we were saying, alter the appearance of the neighborhood, you know.
Does anyone else?
Alter the essential character of the neighborhood, I guess the proper terminology is what to say when you said that, going over that.
Just the general small town feel of.
Yeah, like the village district, yes.
Okay.
And a big 3-story, 1-unit building, gigantic with 38 units, to me is definitely altering the character of the neighborhood.
Does everyone else agree, disagree?
I agree.
Well, with the spirit of the ordinance, the application doesn't specifically address the request for multifamily use where it's not permitted, but instead is focusing on density aspects of the application. And the board finds that a variance is contrary to public interest, and finds that it's contrary to the spirit of the ordinance, it would alter the essential character.
So you're looking at both criteria together, saying the tests are similar, and you think both criteria are not met?
Yes.
Okay, and is the rest of the board in agreement with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they've really specifically addressed the request for, multifamily use.
Okay, all right. So we've got the first two criteria. The next criteria is the substantial justice criteria. And as much for the board as for the public, the substantial justice criteria requires us to engage in a balancing test. What is the benefit to the public from denying the variance versus the loss to the applicant from denying the variance? And you need to weigh those two. So who wants to talk about the substantial justice criteria?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, to me, this proposed development isn't consistent with the present use that's been set forth. It's, the applicant owns 150 acres of property, and it can be developed with single-family homes, a variety of mixed-use stuff. And you can do that over time. You're saying that it's really not going to make any money for 10 years, but at the same time, there's a bunch of other stuff you could do with it. I know that, there's been proposals to do a lot of different things out there, and some of it was basically met with open arms and approved by the town. And you said there was going to be an additional 20 acres, but that's designed to produce more money. It's you're going to plank a big, tall building in the middle of 5 acres, and then, you told us you're going to give us 20 acres, but you're really not. It's been proposed as a golf course, and who knows what else could be.
He had proposed if he could put in the covenant not to be money, yeah. We don't know.
Again, if it doesn't make, it just isn't clear to me that, why would you go through all this to not even make $10,000 a year? Well, because, I would think because there's many other things that are going to go on that property. So, for us, we don't have any reason to believe that the denial of the variance request is going to result in a loss to the property owner. That's where I'm at. In a way, I mean,
Anyone else have anything else to say about that, or do you all agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So the next criteria is property values. Will the proposed multifamily development in the Four Corners district or is it likely to reduce surrounding property values?
Well, we did get a letter that they provided to us stating that it shouldn't harm the property values of the people nearby. This is only one person that said this, a real estate agent, but we have nothing else to say that it will or won't. So I don't believe that it, according to what we have available to us, that it would diminish property values, according to what we have available to us.
Based on the evidence you have before you.
Right.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and we've reviewed it and thought about it, and yeah, that's basically what it comes down to. We don't have another workforce housing building somewhere that I can reference to say, yeah, that guy's house was worth, $500,000 and now it's only worth 300, we just don't. So, yeah, I agree with Dan. We really can't say that it's going to decrease your property value when we just don't have any evidence to support it.
Linda, Lori, anything? I see nods.
No.
Okay.
Good.
So then the final criteria is unnecessary hardship, and this is sort of a three-step test. The first step is that the applicant has to show there's special conditions of the property that differentiate it from other properties in the area. Sort of, what is it about the property that makes it differently burdened by the application of the ordinance to the property? If they show that, then we get to the other two subparts, which is the proposed use reasonable? And is there a fair and substantial relationship between the application of the ordinance to this property and the restrictions? So we start with, are there special conditions of the property? So who wants to talk about?
Well, the application as it was submitted and with all the discussion, it really didn't address this specific request. And we've been unable to put together facts that supported that a literal enforcement of our zoning ordinance to restrict it is an unnecessary hardship. We don't see any special circumstances of this particular property that make it uniquely burdened by not being able to put in this housing. And the application says that it's unique because it's big, so we can do it. But that's not a hardship. Just because it's suited for that use doesn't mean that's the only thing, and it should be allowed to have variance. The fact that it's large, it has nothing to do with the variance request, and it's something that the Supreme Court, an argument that the Supreme Court has rejected as well.
So you don't think there's any special conditions?
There's nothing special about that property that, it's the only place that we can have workforce housing in town. There's nothing special about that property. The size of it does not impact the need.
Does anyone else have anything else to say about that?
No.
Okay. So we've gone through all 5 variance criteria. What I've heard from the board is that 4 of the criteria are not met and 1 of them is. So that would mean...
Well, I still wanted, maybe, Article 25, when we talked a little bit about allowing the housing, Middleton housing in the Four Corners district.
That's the next part of the thing.
Oh, okay, never mind.
We have to vote on this variance.
Yeah, no. Well, I'll make a motion that, based on our study of everything, that we deny the requested variance to allow multifamily housing in the Four Corners district.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Abstain.
Joe's not here. Okay, so 4-0. Okay. So the second variance is to allow workforce housing in the Middleton Four Corners district, and we heard a lot about this.
Okay.
So, workforce housing is not permitted in the Middleton Four Corners district. It is permitted in the rural residential and the residential commercial / industrial districts. And by my view of your zoning map, the rural residential portion of your town is almost all of your town. Okay. So the applicant has said that the public interest is in increasing the stock and the abundance of affordable housing. And that's set forth in state law and your zoning ordinance, which it absolutely is. And the applicant also argues that without the variance, it's unreasonable and unrealistic to develop workforce housing in Middleton, and that there is no workforce housing currently available in Middleton. So let's have someone start talking about those arguments in the public interest. Does anyone want to start?
Well, I elaborate just, and then you can talk, but like I had said, and I appreciate, you had read, Article RSA 674, which you did. You didn't mention the number, but it is all about what workforce housing is, and we've heard it over and over again about affordability and a variety of incomes and things like that. And I just feel, again, like you had mentioned, that the evidence was that the maximum rent would be $1840, I think. And I know that when we looked at the master plan here,
our average rents in Middleton were only like 1,200 or something, you know? And I just really, again, feel that we are in compliance with workforce housing in the town of Middleton based on the different districts, the Sunrise District, the Lake Region District. We have a lot of that already here in our community. But we meet the RSA 674. I just wanted to make that note.
Does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, workforce housing, it's, permitted in Middleton. There's no question about that. But it's not in the Four Corners district. Okay, there's many other places that we could have workforce housing, in residential and rural zones. But the Four Corners district is not zoned for that. Okay, so we can't put it, you can put it any place else in town you want, but not in the Four Corners district. It's not zoned for that.
And what is it about the Four Corners district that
would alter the essence of the, I don't know the proper terminology I'm trying to say, but would alter the essential character, whatever that terminology is.
Well, for me, and I've lived here a long time, it's just a nice, small town appeal of the town, which is why I choose to live in Middleton. I mean, you look at this building and, the blood, sweat, and tears that were put into it and the pride that we take in hanging that flag out front, Old Home Day. And I think that, I just personally feel that a big apartment building would diminish the effect of that.
Alter the essential character.
Linda, do you have anything to add to public interest?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next criteria is spirit of the ordinance. Who wants to talk to that?
I will. It's my favorite thing, is the spirit of the ordinance. The applicant says that by putting in the most concentrated building and preserving 20 acres of open space answers the spirit of the ordinance. The open space is going to be addressed later on, but we all know that, because it was stated at the meeting, that those 20 acres are not going to be maintained as open space. He plans on making it a golf course, so that takes away you're not going to have a house on it, but it's still not going to be open space for people. And putting a population-dense single building, while it might be good for them financially, that's no reason for us to grant a variance for an unpermitted use here. They've offered no basis for us to find that granting this variance would be contrary to the spirit of the ordinance.
Does anyone else have any other thoughts on the spirit of the ordinance?
Yeah, the town voted to limit the development of the Four Corners area. This does not go with the spirit of what the town voted for what the Four Corners district is supposed to be. Single family, two family, or mixed use development.
Sure.
Okay, is what the town voted, and this does not go with the spirit of that law whatsoever.
Although, of course, the variance is the constitutional safety valve of the zoning ordinance. But, okay, so we've covered public interest and spirit of the ordinance. Let's talk about substantial justice. Who wants to talk about that balancing test?
I'll do that, I guess.
Okay.
So the applicant says that the only way you can get substantial justice is by granting these variances because we have basically no workforce housing in this town. Well, I would submit that we have, if you base it on, the price of rent, we have plenty of housing available at that rate. It's the other part of it is, like like has been said a couple of times, that it's only in the four corners where you can't do it. So especially where the applicant isn't even the owner of the building, you could, what's that?
Not the owner of the property.
The property, right. The applicant could seek other people that own parcels of land outside of the four corners and essentially do what they're, what they're talking about doing. So first off, it's two-part deal, right? I think there already is substantial justice because there are rental units available in the town of Middleton, which are well below the 1,800. I feel like, we have our fair share. With that said, there's been some talk about the state, making it sound like the state requires all this other stuff, which simply isn't the case. To classify as being workforce housing availability is the price of rent. It's that, that matrix that they use. If you're below this, or, at least at this or below, then it does classify. So, yeah, I don't feel like we're denying substantial justice.
Does anyone have anything to add? Okay. Diminution of surrounding property values? Anyone?
Well, I covered that with that letter.
Same reasoning?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's all we have is we have one letter.
Yep.
There's no other studies to say that. I mean, property values go up every year anyways.
Yep.
But this is all we have for evidence. So.
All right. And unnecessary hardship. Who wants to talk about that?
See where I'm at.
So the applicant talked about how there's no possibility of constructing workforce housing on any lot in compliance with the ordinance, and that this property is unique because the additional land can be restricted from development.
Well, that's when we had asked if he could, there was 20 acres put aside, and we said if you could make sure that that would be in a covenant of no money making revenue, and the comment came in that no, that eventually down the line, that 20 acres could be, because we had asked about the buffer in the neighborhood. I remember there was some talk about, he said no. He wanted to make sure that that 20 acres could be used in the future for some type of a revenue.
Yeah.
Okay, but this property is not unique in that respect that the land can be restricted from development, to meet the ordinance's density targets. These arguments go more to the third variance than this one here also.
Yeah.
Well, even though he did supply that the money thing, and I appreciate that because you did, it was like $2.5 million, but we had said there's 150 acres, you could have 5 separate buildings.
But you're talking about the third variance, we're still on the second one.
All right, I don't know. It's all the same intertwined with me.
So the applicant also talks about how there's no other undeveloped parcels in the Middleton Four Corners district that could house workforce housing. Do you feel like that makes this property unique?
No.
Yeah. Well, we do have some commercial buildings south of that down there, but nothing in that, there are some commercial buildings, but they're south of that.
Okay.
The little.
And Dan, why don't you think that makes the property unique? Is it for the same reason that it didn't make it unique the first time?
The property was set there by the voters. This is what the voters determined. This is the spirit of the law.
Yep.
That we maintain the look of Middleton.
Yep.
And if you look at the look of Middleton, you've got the school, which is one story. You've got an alpaca farm. You've got another house, which is one story. And there's nothing else.
Yep. Little village district.
This particular district is there to maintain the look of the town, and that is the spirit of the ordinance, so it doesn't make anything, there's nothing unique about it that would be determined that we should have workforce housing there. If anything, it's opposite, because now you're taking away from the whole look of the town. You're taking away from the ordinance and what the spirit of the ordinance was by putting up a building that's so big.
And does the master plan talk about the Four Corners district at all?
Yes,
Well, it does.
And also the master plan, it was stated to us that the master plan considers this very important, but if you look at the master plan, it was the last thing on their list was workforce housing in the town of Middleton, not just the Middleton Corners area. That was the last thing of importance in our master plan.
Well, not specifically workforce housing, but housing prices in general. It wasn't something, it is something that they talked about, but it was, like Dan said, it was at the bottom of the list, you know.
The master plan called to make Middleton Four Corners into like a little village center.
Right.
With, you know, a concentration of smaller homes and maybe, you know, a doctor's office and stuff like that. And putting in a large apartment building does not fit in with walking around in the neighborhood and biking around in the area, and it's a nice little village.
Well, and
It's an apartment building.
it was pretty clear when you read it that that was much higher on the list
Value
of
on-
things
but
that the
yes.
people wanted
Yes.
than you know, good, bad, or indifferent than the price of housing. That was pretty clear to me when I read it.
Well, we had some landlords' testimony that came in and said that their renters all pay less than 30% of their income. They did say that.
Okay, so we've had a good discussion about this requested variance. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to take a vote on it.
What vote do you want to take?
I vote that we deny it
Okay,
for the reasons stated.
all right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so the motion to deny passes 4-0 for the reasons stated. So then the last variance request is to allow 38 units of workforce housing in one building where only 8 are permitted. This is found in Article 25F1A. And in the application, the applicant argues that this restriction makes it unreasonable and unrealistic to develop workforce housing because of the cost of construction. They've provided a couple of pro formas showing that developing the property with 37 units instead of 38 makes the project operate at a loss for the first 11 years, as well as the letter we talked about earlier from North Point Construction Management that says separating these 38 units into 5 separate buildings could add as much as $2.5 to $3 million in construction costs to what otherwise would be about a $10 million project, and that it would also increase the cost of ongoing maintenance. And the applicant also says that the purpose of this restriction of having only 8 units per building is really met by its proposal to restrict the additional 20 acres from development. So let's, again, go through the variance criteria and start with whether or not granting the variance to allow 38 units in one building would be contrary to the purpose of the ordinance. And to do that, let's start about talking what is the purpose of the ordinance, of this restriction in particular.
Well, it's mainly the size of this mass building, which helps in the agriculture and in the rural character of the village. I mean, the community village setting in this massive big building again. With 3 stories.
So you think the purpose of requiring only 8 units per building is to keep the rural feel of the town
Yes,
and to keep the architectural style of the town?
Yes, definitely.
And I think what I heard you say is putting them all in one building would be contrary to that.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say about that?
Well, I also think that, you know, part of the reasoning of the ordinance might be you know, smaller units gives the town more time to adjust to the influx of what, what a housing unit is going to bring to the town, whether it's added police and fire or things of that nature. So, yeah, I mean, that's.
And putting a building this size on 5.7 acres of land goes totally against what the town voted for this district.
Okay.
Okay, it does not at all
The rural-
maintain our rural beauty and the intention of why that was set aside, what the voters voted for that.
Okay.
It goes totally against that.
Okay, so I think what you're talking to more is the spirit of the ordinance.
Yes.
Does anyone else want to speak to the spirit of the ordinance?
Well, again, we got this massive building on less than 6 acres. The temptation of, oh, there's going to be 20 acres that's not going to be used. Well, the people living in those units are not going to be able to use the facility unless they belong to the golf club. So that was a temptation that was put out there that really doesn't serve a purpose of being undeveloped properties. We did ask, I know I was the one who asked, if there was a possibility to put an easement on that property for people to use, and the answer was no. So the same arguments are made for the spirit of the ordinance as they were for the purpose of the ordinance. Granting this variance would be contrary to both the spirit and the purpose of the ordinance.
Does anyone else have anything else to offer on those two?
Well, it's, you can't have it both ways, right? In one way, you say that the purpose of the restriction is to regulate the density of the housing. On the other hand, you argue there is no discernible public interest in limiting workforce housing to 8 units. So, I disagree that there is no purpose, because it doesn't necessarily agree. The only purpose of the restriction is regulated density. It also limits the size of the building, and, if you keep them small, it helps preserve the rural character of the town.
Okay. Good. Okay. Let's move on to substantial justice. Again, here we have that balancing test, gain to the public versus loss to the applicant.
Hardship.
No, we're not on hardship, we're on substantial justice.
So, based on the evidence, there's a financial loss to the applicant from requiring that the units be divided into separate buildings. Regarding the property values, we find that it's hard to believe constructing 38 units in one building would not reduce the value of surrounding homes. We do recognize that the one piece of expert testimony that we have, is, just for me, contrary to, I am an abutter. So, yeah, I'm concerned, but,
Wait a minute, you're in a butter?
yes. Well, no, my wife is in a butter.
Okay.
I'm not in a butter.
Okay.
My wife is in a butter. But, yeah.
Okay. So what I heard you just say is that substantial justice would be done by granting this variance, and that property values would not be diminished by granting this variance.
Given the evidence.
Given the evidence before the board.
That we have seen, yes. Not necessarily my personal feeling, but, yeah,
Okay.
that's where I'm at.
Does anyone else disagree with that?
Well, I agree that we did have a letter from a realtor who did say, there's no evidence that the property values diminish. But, one of the big complaints we had with people putting up cell towers, oh, my property's going to be diminished. Well, that's only a cell tower. Living next to an apartment building is going to me, that's more substantial than living next to a cell tower.
But we have to admit that the only evidence that you
The only proof that we have is from some realtor someplace, who said it doesn't.
Okay, all right. So that leaves us with unnecessary hardship. and whether or not we think there are special circumstances, and if so, if the use is reasonable, and whether there's a fair and substantial relationship. So who wants to tackle this?
Well, I don't see a hardship there, because hardship for the purposes of the variance needs to arise from the land, not the circumstances of the applicant. The property here is 150 acres. Now, it's plenty big enough to accommodate 5 separate buildings. Well, the board recognizes that the constructing of these 5 buildings units is, going to lead to less of a return of investment. That inquiry is relevant to determine whether the proposed use is reasonable. The question is not reached unless the board first determines there are special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties, and we have determined that it's not distinguishable from any other property in town. It has no special circumstances.
Okay. So again, we've gone through all the variance criteria. Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we vote not to grant this variance.
Okay. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so 4-0, that variance is denied as well.
Just in time?
Your timing is impeccable.
How do you do it?
Does anyone have anything else they want to say on any of the variances? So you have 30 days to request a rehearing, and the notice of decision should be ready throughout this week. Thank you.
If we have, do we have any other business?
Is there anything we need to do before we adjourn?
I don't think so.
We gonna look at that application today?
I think we said for next meeting.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:14.
I'll second.
Second.
Jim made the motion, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've had a sit there, we didn't want to come out of the big house and with the heat